The chandeliers in the Aurora crown looked like frozen constellations hanging low over a sea of tuxedos and jewel-toned dresses. Every surface seemed to shine, glass walls, polished marble, the thin stems of champagne flutes catching light from every angle. Waiters slipped through the crowd with practiced grace. Laughter rose and fell in soft waves under the hum of quiet negotiations. In the far corner of the ballroom, half in shadow, a black grand piano waited under its own small pool of warm light. Noah Mercer sat at the bench, shoulders relaxed, fingers drifting over the last, lazy notes of a jazz standard. A small round of applause rolled toward him, polite and distant. He lifted his hands from the keys and let the sound die on its own. He could smell citrus and expensive perfume, but under that the faint trace of polish on the piano and the resin from the bow of a string quartet that had played earlier. Those were the scents that made sense to him. The rest of the room might as well have been a movie set. Noah glanced at his watch. One more piece, and he could pack up, head back to Brooklyn, and read Lily a bedtime story, if she was still awake. The thought took some of the edge off the stiff collar of the borrowed dress shirt. Across the room, the doors of the ballroom opened again. Noise from the hotel hallway spilled in, then narrowed as the doors closed behind a small group of people, flanked by cameras and eager faces. At the center of that cluster walked Claire Arden. Her photo was on at least 3 of the magazines, stacked on the coffee table in Noah's tiny office at the shop. CEO of Arden Dynamics, youngest on some list he had not read all the way them through. The press had given her a sharp, cold nickname that people liked to repeat at cocktail parties. Tonight she wore a simple black dress that moved like ink when she walked. Her hair was twisted up, a few loose strands catching the light. Every gesture she made was precise, a hand on a shoulder, the brief curve of her mouth at a joke she probably did not find funny. The click of her heels on the marble floor was a metronome under the music piped in from hidden speakers. She did not look toward the piano, not yet. The MC stepped onto a small, raised platform, tapped the microphone, and let out a smooth introduction about innovation and leadership. Claire lifted a glass when her name was mentioned, and nodded once expression composed, camera ready. Phone screens glowed as people snapped pictures. Noah felt a pulse of relief when the MC finally turned toward him. "And to close out the evening," the man said, "a final piece from our pianist, Mr. Mercer." A few heads turned in his direction. A faint spotlight brightened above the piano. Noah reached down to the worn leather folder, resting by his foot. His fingers brushed over the edges of familiar scores until they found the single sheet tucked at the back. The paper was slightly yellowed corners, soft pencil markings smudged in a few spots. The title line was empty. Only 3 small words were written in neat script where a name might have been, bridge left uncrossed. He had found it 6 days ago, folded and hidden inside the wooden frame of a beat-up upright in his shop. It was not complex, but it had hooked into him in a way he could not quite explain. A melody that climbed, hesitated, then fell just short of resolution. It felt like someone had been halfway through saying something important, then walked out of the room. He set the page on the stand, drew a slow breath, and let his fingers fall. The first notes came out soft, almost unsure, like a question asked in a quiet room. The left hand laid down a steady, low pattern. The right hand answered with a fragile, searching line that seemed to feel its way along the keys. Near the center of the ballroom, Claire lifted her glass, then went very still. The noise around her blurred. The clinking of crystal, the drone of the MC, the murmur of a nearby conversation about quarterly projections all slid into the background. Her throat tightened. A small pulse jumped at the base of her neck. That melody. Her grip on the thin stem of the flute tightened. For a second, she thought she had imagined it, that her brain had pulled a sound from a place it had buried years ago. But the next measure came, and it was exactly where she knew it would be. A hollow ache opened in her chest. She could feel the ballroom floor under her stilettos, but her body did not believe she was in Manhattan anymore. Air felt heavier, full of dust and heat, and the faint iron smell of blood on asphalt. She set her glass down too hard. Champagne sloshed. Some of it landed on the cuff of her dress. She did not look down. The room had not changed. People still laughed, smiled for photos, angled their bodies toward business opportunities. Yet every sound seemed wrapped in cotton. The only thing sharp enough to cut through was the piano. Claire turned toward it. Her face did not show much, not yet, but her eyes had lost their calculated focus. She moved through the crowd without apologizing or explaining a black shape. Cutting through color, Noah saw her before she reached the piano. He recognized her from the press and from brief glances earlier in the evening. The CEO, who had barely looked his way when she arrived, now walked straight toward him, eyes fixed on the keys. He did not stop playing. If anything, he leaned a little deeper into the fragile climb of the melody, curious about what pulled her in so hard. She reached the side of the piano and stood there too close for a stranger, hands clenched at her sides. From his angle, he could see the way her shoulders shook once before she caught herself. Her lips moved. At first he thought she was mouthing along with the notes, but then he heard her very softly. "How are you playing this?" He kept his attention on the keys. People sometimes reacted strongly to music. It was not his job to explain why it happened. He let the progression carry him further into the piece, to the part that always felt like the floor dropping out. Claire stepped closer, the edge of the piano pressing into her hip. As his right hand reached the final incomplete phrase, her hand shot out and closed around his wrist. The chord died mid-air, the last notes ringing alone in the brief silence that followed. Conversation nearby faltered. Someone laughed too loudly out of place, then hushed. Noah turned his head. Her fingers were ice cold against his skin. Up close, she looked less like the woman in the magazines, and more like someone who had not slept for a very long time. Mascara had begun to smudge under one eye. A small vein pulsed at her temple. "Where did you learn that song?" she asked. Her voice was low, steady on the surface, but there was something fraying underneath. Noah glanced at the crowd watching them, then back at her. The MC started toward them with a nervous smile that did not reach his eyes. "Ma'am," Noah said quietly, "maybe we should talk somewhere else." Her jaw tightened. After a heartbeat, she let go of his wrist. She turned without another word and started toward a side door near the stage, the kind that usually only staff used. She did not look back, but she left the door slightly open with a small lift of her hand, an unspoken invitation. Noah rested his fingers on the keys for a second, then stood. The room shifted around him, curiosity, speculation, the prickle of phone cameras aimed at his back. He ignored them and followed her through the door. The hallway behind the ballroom smelled like detergent and warm air from the kitchen. Exposed pipes ran along the ceiling. The floor here was plain tile, not polished stone. Claire stood halfway down the corridor, one hand braced on the wall, the other pressed over her mouth. Her shoulders rose and fell in sharp rhythm. The harsh hotel light flattened the makeup on her face, but it could not hide the streak of dampness on her cheek. She dropped her hand when he approached, pulling herself upright with visible effort. "Tell me exactly where you got that music," she said. Noah kept his voice even. "I repair pianos," he said. "Last week I worked on an old upright." The sheet was folded and wedged inside the back of the frame. No title, just those words at the top. Bridge left uncrossed. He watched her face as he spoke. At the mention of the frame, something in her expression cracked. Recognition, fear, grief in a form he knew too well. "It was the only thing in there," he added. "I did not change it, I just copied it so I would not ruin the original." For a long moment she did not move. Her gaze drifted down as if she could see the keys through the floor, the ghost of every note he had just played. When she spoke again, her voice had hardened, not in anger, but in resolve. "I will pay you for it," she said. "The original sheet, and for your silence about it, whatever number you want." He almost smiled at the reflex. Money as solution thrown like a blanket over something that was very clearly not a financial problem. "I am sorry," Noah said. "It is not for sale." Her eyes snapped up to his. "Everything is for sale." He shook his head. "Some things are not supposed to be traded," he replied. "Whoever wrote that, it feels like they put a piece of themselves in it. It is not just paper. It is a story that never got to finish." The words left his mouth before he could dress them up. They hung there between them, simple and blunt. Claire's throat worked. She turned away from him, facing the pale hallway wall. Her hand lifted to touch it, as if she needed something solid under her palm to stay upright. For a few seconds, all he could hear was the far-off clatter from the kitchen and the muffled hum of the ballroom on the other side of the doors. She straightened slowly. By the time she faced him again, the tears were gone. Her features had slotted back into the controlled mask from earlier, but the effort left a faint tremor at the corner of her mouth. Without answering, she walked past him toward the ballroom, heels clicking sharp on the tiles as, at the door, she paused just long enough to draw a steadying breath. Then she was gone, swallowed by the light and noise on the other side. Noah walked back through the service door, into the ballroom, in time to hear the MC making a joke that did not quite land. Conversation had already patched itself over the awkward pause that his sudden absence had caused. People had turned away from the piano and returned to their circles of light. He sat down again, placed his hands on the keys, and played something safe and bright that asked nothing of anyone. Nobody listened closely. That was fine. He followed the set list until his contracted hours were done, then closed the lid on the grand piano with a soft click. Outside, the winter air on 47th Street bit through the fabric of his jacket. Noah pulled it tighter around himself and shifted his leather folder under one arm. The hotel canopy glowed gold above him. Cars slid past in steady lines of red and white. Somewhere behind him, on one of the higher floors, people were still laughing under crystal and glass. He moved toward the subway shoes, scraping salt from the sidewalk. The melody from the untitled piece ran in his head in perfect detail. So did the look on Claire Arden's face when she grabbed his wrist. He had seen grief before. It lived in eyes and the way a mouth held itself too carefully. He had never seen it arrive that fast. On the train, he found a seat near the door. The car rocked as it left Midtown for Brooklyn. A young couple argued softly in the opposite corner. A man in a reflective jacket slept with his head against the window, earbuds in. Someone's takeout steamed up a faint smell of garlic and soy. Noah rested the folder on his lap and pressed his hand over it. He did not open it. He knew every mark on that sheet already, the careful script at the top, the places where the pencil had dug deeper into the paper, the bar where the melody simply stopped, as if the person writing it had been pulled away in the middle of a sentence. He closed his eyes, let the sway of the train loosen the knot between his shoulders, and pictured Lily asleep in her bed above the shop, her hair a tangle on the pillow, one arm flung over the stuffed rabbit that had lost an ear. The train climbed out of the tunnel into the open air. Snow from earlier in the week sat in dirty ridges along the tracks. The city changed texture past the river. Glass towers gave way to brick murals, metal gates rolled down over storefronts. When Noah pushed open the side door of Mercer Piano Works, the familiar scent of sawdust and varnish met him like a hand on his back. The main room was a long rectangle of scuffed wood floors and pianos in various stages of undress. Keys removed, strings exposed, music stands leaning against the wall. He turned on the lamps one by one. Warm pools of light spread over the benches and work tables. In the corner by the space heater, a small couch sagged under the weight of a faded quilt. A tiny sneaker was on the floor beside it. A head popped up from under the quilt as the door clicked shut. "Did you finish the party, Daddy?" Lily rubbed her eyes and scrambled to sit up. Her pajamas were covered in cartoon stars. One sock had a hole at the toe. "Yeah," Noah said. "You stayed up late." "Mrs. Patel let me watch that baking show. The one where the cake fell on the floor." Lily grinned, then peered past him. "Did you bring any fancy food?" He lifted the paper bag in his hand, the smell of chocolate and sugar drifting out. "They had little desserts on tiny plates." "Please, I stole some for you," she gasped in mock outrage. "Stealing is bad." "Borrowing forever," he corrected, carrying the bag to the workbench. "Different category." She hopped off the couch and padded after him in socked feet, humming a jumbled tune as she went. It took him a heartbeat to realize she had picked up the contour of the piece he had played at the hotel without knowing it. Noah set the folder on a high shelf, out of reach of small hands, then unpacked a few mini tarts from the bag. Lily took a bite and closed her eyes. "Rich people dessert tastes weird," she said around a mouthful. "Do they not have sugar where they live?" He laughed, dropped a kiss on the top of her head, and pulled her into a quick hug. "Come on," he said. "Teeth then, bed?" She protested, but only a little. On the way up the narrow stairs to the small apartment above the shop, she talked about school, about a classmate who had drawn a dragon that looked more like a sausage, about how Mrs. Patel had promised to teach her how to make real bread. He listened with half his attention, the other half still caught in the echo of Claire's fingers on his wrist. When Lily was finally under the quilt in her own bed, Rabbit tucked at her side, he sat in the chair nearby until her breathing slowed and evened out. Only then did he go back down to the shop. The room felt bigger at night, quieter. The city outside the windows had softened into moving dots of light and the occasional rumble from the avenue. Noah climbed on a stool, took the leather folder from the shelf, and opened it on the workbench. He slid out the original sheet, handling it with the care he used for the oldest instruments in his care. Under the bright desk lamp, every detail stood out. The treble clef at the top, the tempo marking in small script, the 3 words at the center of the page that had not left his mind since he first found it. Bridge left uncrossed. He traced the air above the last bar where the notes stopped. A blank space waited there, carrying more weight than the lines that came before. He thought of Claire's face when he said it was not for sale, the way something in her had jolted at the word incomplete. He slid the paper back into its sleeve, returned the folder to the shelf, and turned off the lamp. The melody followed him into sleep. On the other side of the river, glass threw back the city lights in 1,000 tidy reflections. The top floors of one of those towers belonged to Claire Arden. She let herself into her apartment with the quiet click of a key card. The entryway lights came on at a low setting, illuminating clean lines, black and pale oak art that did not quite look personal. She took off her heels and left them near the door without her usual habit of lining them up. A soft pattern of carpet met her bare feet as she moved toward the wall of windows that looked out over Manhattan. From here, the city looked contained. The streets were lines of orange and white. The river was a dark ribbon. The Aurora Crown was a small, bright shape among many others. Her phone buzzed on the console table. A message from her assistant, Grace. "Everything all right?" People noticed you left the ballroom. Claire typed back, fingers steady on the screen. Fine. Long day. Early meeting tomorrow. She put the phone face down without waiting for a reply. The apartment was too quiet. Usually that suited her. Tonight the silence did not feel neutral. It felt crowded. That same thin melody from the gala threaded itself through the stillness, looped and twisted. She crossed the living room and stopped in front of a low shelf. A small wooden music box sat there, square and unadorned, except for a scratch at one corner. Her thumb found the familiar mark. She had not opened it in years. Her hand hovered over the lid, then closed into a fist. She stepped back from the shelf. In the open kitchen, under cool white light, she poured herself water, brought the glass to her lips, set it down untouched. Her reflection in the window above the sink looked like someone else. The dress, the earrings, the mask she had been building since she was 18. She walked to her bedroom, unzipped the black dress, and let it fall in a whisper of fabric. As she pulled on a soft shirt, the edge of a cardboard folder peeked out from the back of her closet. She stared at it for a moment, then pulled it free. Inside were copies of old sheet music, some printed, others written in the same neat hand she had recognized at the hotel. The paper smelled faintly of dust and something like iron. She sat down on the edge of the bed and spread them out. Here was a waltz that never found a third section, a jagged cluster of chords that had once made her laugh because Julian had called it his angry city piece. Her fingertips followed the staffs, remembering. There, between two more complete pages, sat a torn corner with a few bars of a melody. The opening line, the same line she had heard weave through the clink of champagne glasses earlier. Her chest tightened. He had been working on it the week before the accident. At the kitchen table, notebook open, tapping the pencil on his teeth when he got stuck. I am building us a bridge, he had said, scribbling the words above the staff. So we never get stuck on one side of anything. They had argued that morning about something small, who would drive, whether he should take that old route along the river. She had watched him grab his keys, heard the sound of the car door closing. The next sounds after that had come from a stranger on the phone. The memory flashed clear, then dissolved back into the present. The rest of that melody had gone with him. She had searched his notebooks, later his drafts, the piano bench that had held so many crumpled pages. Nothing. The opening line, then silence. Yet tonight, in a hotel ballroom that smelled of money and cologne, that unfinished song had uncoiled itself, as if it had only been waiting. Claire pressed her fingers into her temples until stars bloomed at the edge of her vision. It could not be a coincidence. It was too exact. The spacing, the lift of the phrase, even the way it refused to end. She stood abruptly, gathered the sheets, and slid them back into the folder, then carried it to the closet and tucked it behind a box of untouched winter clothes. In the bathroom, she washed her face until the skin beneath her eyes stung. When she lifted her head, the woman in the mirror looked like she had at 20 after the funeral, when she had promised herself she would never let anyone see her like that again. She turned off the light before the thought finished. Sleep came in thin slices. At dawn, the towers outside her window glowed faintly pink. Claire, dressed in a navy suit, tied her hair back and walked into the lobby of Arden Dynamics with her posture perfectly straight, coffee in hand, expression trained. The building was all glass and steel. The lobby ceiling soared. A reception desk stretched under a sculpture of hanging metal rods that caught the light and sent it scattering. Employees moved in quick lines, badges, swinging voices low. "Good morning, Ms. Arden," the security guard said. She nodded. The elevator doors closed around her walls of brushed metal, reflecting her image back 4 times over. Her floor opened onto glass offices and thin carpet. On the far wall, the logo of Arden Dynamics gleamed above a wide view of the river. Grace looked up from her desk outside Claire's office. "Morning," Grace said. "You have Victor at 9, strategy at 10, the regulatory call at 11. Claire gave a small sound of acknowledgement and set her bag down. "Also," Grace added, hesitating for the first time that morning, "the hotel sent over their invoice and event summary. They attached the list of vendors in case you wanted to review." Claire's hand paused on the handle of her office door. "Send it to me," she said. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and scanned through a block of emails about projections and contracts until the hotel message appeared. Attached was a neat document with names and contacts. Lighting, catering, security, floral design. Her scroll slowed at the line marked Entertainment. Piano Noah Mercer. A number, an email address. Under that, in smaller font, the name of a business. Mercer Piano Works, Brooklyn. She read the line twice, then reached for a pen and copied the address onto a yellow sticky note in her own precise handwriting. The paper made a small dry sound as she peeled it from the pad and pressed it to the edge of her screen. The sticky note stayed on the edge of Claire's screen all morning. She moved through her meetings as planned. Victor came in at 9 with a slide deck full of clean charts. She asked the right questions, signed off on the right decisions, gave measured responses when he raised the subject of a potential acquisition in Europe. Strategy at 10 blurred into regulatory at 11. Her voice was steady, her notes were neat. But every time she glanced up at her monitor, the small square of yellow with the Brooklyn address in her own handwriting looked back at her. By noon, the numbers on the spreadsheets had started to swim. She closed her laptop, stood, and crossed to the glass wall of her office. The river below looked flat and far away. The reflection in the pane showed a woman in an expensive suit with her arms folded, shoulders drawn tight. She watched her own reflection for a long moment, then turned back to her desk. "Grace," she said into the intercom. "Clear the rest of my afternoon." There was the briefest pause. "All of it," Grace asked. "Tell Victor I'm reviewing off-site. He can email anything that cannot wait." "Understood." 20 minutes later, Claire sat in the back of a black SUV as it rolled over the bridge out of Manhattan. The driver made smooth lane changes through lunchtime traffic. The towers of glass shrank in the rear window, and the city shifted into a different rhythm. Brooklyn greeted her with narrower streets, brick facades, storefronts with hand-painted signs. Snow was piled at the curb in gray ridges. Children in puffy jackets tugged at their parents' hands near a corner grocery. A man in a beanie stepped out of a barber shop and lit a cigarette, cupping the flame with his palm. The SUV turned down a quieter side street. Parked cars lined both sides. Trees without leaves stood like black veins against the pale sky. The driver checked the address on his phone and slowed in front of a low building with a faded painted sign above the door. "Mercer Piano Works." The front windows were large but dusty, the glass clouded where years of fingerprints had never quite wiped clean. Behind one pane sat the silhouette of an upright piano. The paint on the doorframe had chipped away in places, exposing raw wood. "I can wait, Ms. Arden," the driver said. "That will not be necessary," she replied. "You are off the clock. I will call a car later." He hesitated, then nodded. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cold air hitting her cheeks, and listened to the engine fade as the SUV drove away. For a moment she just stood there, one hand on the strap of her bag, watching her own faint reflection in the dusty glass. Her polished image looked out of place beside the scuffed door and the narrow stoop. She pulled the door open. A bell above it chimed thin and bright. The smell hit her first. Sawdust, old wood, a hint of metal and varnish. Warmer notes of coffee. The air felt thicker than in her office, as if it held a history of hands and sound. The main room was longer than it looked from outside. Upright pianos stood along the walls, their lids propped, hammers and strings exposed. A grand piano lay open in the center, its fallboard removed keys bare. Work tables held jars of screws, felt pads, stacks of yellowing sheet music. A small radio on a shelf murmured a song from another decade. Noah was at one of the benches, his back to the door, leaning over a keyboard assembly he had pulled out of an instrument. He wore jeans and a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled up. A smear of black dust streaked his forearm. His head tilted slightly as he pressed a key and listened to the soft thud of felt on wood. "Hello," she said. He looked up. For a heartbeat, confusion crossed his features, then recognition settled in. "Ms. Arden." The formal name sounded almost strange in this room. "You found the place," he added. "I had your name," she said, "and a hotel invoice." He wiped his hands on a rag and came closer, stopping at a respectful distance. "I am guessing you are not here for a tuning," he said. Her gaze skimmed the room, landing on the edges of pianos, with chipped lacquer, the worn patches on the floor, where feet had walked the same path many times. "I want the music at," she said. "The original sheet, and your assurance that you will not play it in public again." Her voice belonged to boardrooms, to negotiations. Calm, controlled. It sounded thin against the dense quiet of the shop. "I can pay far more than the hotel is paying you for a month of work." Noah studied her for a moment, eyes steady. Then he nodded toward a battered upright near the back wall. "Sit down," he said. "Perhaps you did not understand." "I understood." His tone was mild. "You came all the way from Midtown. The least I can do is give you a chair." The bench creaked as she sat. The piano beside her bore scratches, a ring from a cup that had once been set carelessly on its lid, a long, shallow scar across one side where something heavy had scraped it. Noah walked to a shelf, took down the leather folder, and opened it. He slid out a copy of the sheet and set it on the stand of the upright she sat at. Not the original, she noticed. The edges were too clean. He did not offer her the page. Instead, he sat beside her, leaving a small space between them, and placed his hands on the keys. "I am not going to sell you anything," he said quietly, "but I can do this." He began to play. In the hotel, the melody had floated above a wash of noise. Here it settled into the bones of the room. The sound was closer, fuller. The left-hand patterns sank into the wood floor. The right-hand line lifted and curled through the small space. Claire sat very still. Her fingers flattened against her knees, pressing the fabric of her slacks. The notes were the same. Every interval, every small hesitation. They hit different now that nothing competed with them. When the phrase reached the place where it always stepped back from completion, her throat closed, her eyes burned, the edges of the shot blurred. She did not fight it this time. Tears slid hot and unwanted down her face. A small sound escaped her halfway between a laugh and a gasp, as if she had been holding her breath for 12 years and suddenly remembered how to exhale. Noah kept playing. He did not look at her. He repeated the final section, drew out the unresolved chord, then let his hands fall to his lap. The last note faded into the smell of wood and old cloth. She raised one hand to cover her mouth. Her shoulders shook once, twice, then again harder. Sorry, she managed the word, catching. You do not have to be sorry, he said. She shook her head as if trying to dislodge something and wiped at her eyes with the pad of her thumb. He wrote that, she said, voice low. Julian, my boyfriend. He died when we were 18. I thought that part of him was gone. That piano, that kitchen, that drive. Noah waited. He did not fill the air with questions or quiet noises of sympathy. He let her choose the next sentence. He never finished it, she said. I looked for weeks, months. The rest of that melody is not in any of his things. She stared at the sheet on the stand, the neat bars, the familiar hand. And then you were just playing it at a hotel like background noise. There was no accusation in her tone, only an exhausted kind of wonder. I am not saying that to blame you, she added quickly. You could not have known. Noah rested his forearms on his thighs and looked at the floor for a moment before answering. I found it in the back of a piano someone brought in date, he said. Tucked into the frame. No name, no story, just the music. It felt like something that should be heard. Her eyes moved from the page to his face. And now, she said, it is heard. You can let it go. He shook his head once. It does not feel like something to let go of, he said. It feels like something that is still trying to say what it was meant to say. Silence settled between them, not empty, but full of all the things that had just been pulled up from places she had tried to concrete over. The shop door banged open. Daddy Mrs. Patel said I can have 2 cookies if I eat a carrot that is unfair math. The small voice arrived before its owner. Lily burst into the room, scarf trailing, cheeks pink from the cold. She stopped short when she saw Claire on the bench. Oh, Lily said. Her eyes widened. She took in the black coat, the careful hair, the unfamiliar face. You are the lady from the big hotel, she added after a second with the direct honesty of a child. The one who looked like a picture. Claire blinked, caught off guard. I suppose that is me, she said. Lily patted closer, curiosity overcoming shyness. In her hand was a piece of paper covered in crayon lines. She held it up toward Claire. I drew this while I was waiting, she said. It is my dad and me and someone else. But I did not know what her face looked like yet, so I left it blank. Claire took the paper carefully. 2 stick figures stood beside a rectangle that was clearly a piano. One had wild yellow scribbles for hair. One had brown. The third was taller in a triangle dress, with only a circle where the face should be. That is her, Lily explained, pointing at the blank circle. I think she will help Dad fix things. Noah made a small sound in his throat. Lily, he said, a warning hidden under her name. What? She asked. You always say you fix broken stuff. Maybe someone needs to fix you too. Claire surprised herself by laughing. It broke out of her sudden and soft chasing some of the tightness from her chest. The sound startled her as much as anyone. Lily brightened at the success. You can be her, Lily decided. If you want, I can give her your hair. She reached for a crayon from the nearest table, a waxy brown that almost matched the color of Claire's twisted bun. May I? Lily asked, much too late to be truly asking permission. Claire looked at Noah. He lifted one shoulder, the closest thing to a shrug he allowed himself in that moment. It is your drawing, Claire said. You should finish it. Lily carefully colored in the circle. The pressure made the paper bend slightly in Claire's hands. When she finished, she leaned back to inspect her work, then nodded satisfied. There, she said. Now she looks like she belongs. Claire swallowed. Thank you, she said. I'm not sure anyone has ever drawn me before. Really? Lily frowned. That is sad. Noah cleared his throat. Lily, Mrs. Patel is waiting, he said. Carrots before cookies, remember. Lily groaned, but handed the drawing to Claire. You can keep it, she said. So you remember where the music lives now. Claire looked down at the uneven lines, the sun drawn in the corner, the little stick hands reaching for each other. I will, she said. As Lily trotted toward the stairs at the back that led up to the apartment, she hummed a fragment of the melody again. It drifted back to the bench in bright, slightly off key notes. Claire folded the drawing very carefully, as if it might tear, and slid it into the inside pocket of her coat. She stood smoothing the front of her jacket. I still want the original, she said, but her tone had lost some of its hard edge. Yet I understand that you feel a responsibility to it. Noah gave a small nod. I will not play it at another gala, he said. You have my word on that. Her eyes met his. "That is something," she said. At the door she paused and looked back once more. The room was full of flaws. Scratched wood, mismatched chairs, a radio with a crack along one side. It felt more solid than any glass room she had stood in for years. "Thank you for the music," she said. "You are welcome." The bell chimed as she stepped outside. The air was colder now. She pulled her coat tight and started down the block, the folded drawing pressing lightly against her ribs with every breath. The drawing stayed in Claire's coat pocket for 3 days. She felt it each time she reached for her phone or her access card, the slight crackle of paper under her fingers. During a tense call with investors, her thumb brushed the folded edge and her thoughts snagged on a stick figure in a triangle dress beside a piano. On the 4th morning, she found herself standing in front of her closet, holding the coat and not put it on. She set it aside, chose another, then changed her mind and reached for the original again. The weight of the paper was nothing. The presence of it was not. She arrived at Arden Dynamics exactly on time, walked through the lobby, with her usual pace, nodded at the familiar faces. The day filled with schedules, a closed-door session with legal, a review of quarterly forecasts, an email from Victor asking for an updated overview of her travel. She replied with a single line. "Mostly internal. I will provide a summary at the end of the week." When the clock on her screen edged toward 4, she stopped reading, sat back in her chair, and let her gaze find the river outside her window. The light had turned thin. A low cloud cover smeared the skyline. Her hand drifted to her pocket. The drawing came out folded into a small square. She opened it on the desk. The sun in the corner was too big, its rays uneven, some longer than the others. The 3 figures held hands. The tall one in the dress had hair colored in thick brown strokes that had pressed so hard the crayon had broken in places. On impulse, she pulled her phone closer and took a picture of it. The screen lit up with the image. It looked almost absurd against the clean interface of her calendar and email apps. Absurd and stubbornly real. She closed the phone, then she called for a car. In Brooklyn, the light was already starting to bleed out of the sky when she pushed open the door of Mercer Piano Works again. The bell chimed. Warm air brushed against her face. Noah looked up from a grand piano near the center of the room. He had the keyboard assembly half out of the case. Wires, felt, and wood made a careful mess in front of him. "It is you," he said. She could not tell if he was surprised or if he had expected this. "I had some time," she said. Then, aware of how unnatural that sounded, even to her own ears, she added, "The office can survive 2 hours without me." Noah put down the tool in his hand and stepped away from the piano. "I can make coffee," he offered. "Or try. I mostly use it to stay awake when I'm regluing things." "Coffee is fine," she said. He moved behind a small counter near the back of the room where a battered machine sat beside a sink. The hiss and sputter of water filled the space, blending with the faint hum of the old radio. Claire walked slowly between the pianos. Some had polished cases. Others bore rings where glasses had once been set, pale ghosts in the finish. She trailed her fingertips along one lid, feeling the slight drag of dust. Behind her, Lily's drawing rustled in her pocket. Noah handed her a mug. It was chipped on one side, but the coffee inside was hot and smelled almost normal. "You came back for the music?" he said. "That is part of it." "And the other part?" She looked at the nearest keyboard at the narrow pattern of black and white. "I have not sat at a piano in 12 years, she said. "Before your gala, I had not heard that melody in just as long. Yesterday, I spent 10 minutes standing in front of my old music box with my hand frozen on the lid. It seems simpler to walk into a place that already smells like this." He nodded as if that explanation were perfectly reasonable. "You can sit there," he said, "if you want." He motioned to the same upright she had used before. She sat. The bench felt more familiar under her this time, as if her shape had already made an impression in the cushion. Noah set his own mug on top of the piano, far from the edge, and pulled the copied sheet out again. He placed it on the stand. "You used to play," he said. She kept her eyes on the paper. "I used to try," she replied. "Julian played." "It is still muscle memory, May," he said. "Even if the muscles are rusty." He rested his hand lightly on the far end of the keyboard and pressed a single high key. The note rang out thin and bright. "Put your right hand here," he said. Her fingers hovered for a second, then lowered until they rested on the cool surface of the keys. Her hands looked different than they had at 18, more defined, a faint scar near the knuckle of her thumb from some forgotten mishap in an office, not at an instrument. "Thumb on this one," he guided, nudging her hand over a key. "Middle finger here. Start with those two, like this." He did not take control of her hand, only pointed and waited. She pressed down. The sound came out unsteady but correct. Her body reacted before her mind did. A shiver ran up her arm to her shoulder. Her stomach clenched, then settled. "It is like touching something you buried in the backyard and pretending you forgot where," she said quietly. "Then pretend you're just dusting it off," he said. "Play the first bar." he counted softly. She followed, halting, at first stumbling on the second measure, pressing the wrong note once and flinching as if the instrument might punish her for it. It does not bite, he said. Try again. She did. This time the melody came out slightly smoother, the gaps between notes a little smaller. They worked through 4 bars like that. His voice calm, patient, her jaw tense, then gradually loosening. On the 5th attempt, the phrase fell into place as it had been written. She stopped, fingers still resting on the keys. Her eyes were bright. I remember this part, she said. He played it so often that summer that my neighbor told me she could hear it through the wall. I wanted to kill him and then never have him stop. The admission sat between them without embarrassment. Do you want to try the left hand? Noah asked. She shook her head quickly. 1 step at a time. 1 hand at a time, he agreed. A few more repetitions, and she let her shoulders drop an inch. The air around them felt less tight. From the back of the shop came the thud of small feet on the stairs. Dad, Mrs. Patel said the carrots today taste like sadness. Lily appeared, hair mussed, socks mismatched. She carried a book under one arm, its pages splayed from use. She stopped again when she saw Claire, but this time her surprise warmed quickly into something like pleasure. Hi, Lily said. You came back. Apparently I did, Claire answered. Lily peered at her hands on the keys. Are you learning our song? Our song, Claire repeated. It lives here now, Lily said, tapping the side of the upright with her knuckles. So it is kind of ours. Noah cleared his throat lightly. Lily is supposed to be reading for school, he reminded. I can read in here, she said, hopping onto a stool nearby. The piano does not mind. She opened the book and began to whisper the story to herself, lips moving, voice barely above the faint crackle of the radio. Rain arrived without much warning that week. One afternoon, the sky over Brooklyn thickened in an hour, and then water rattled on the shop's old windows in steady sheets. Neon outside smeared into blurred lines. Claire stood near the door, watching the wet sidewalk with a tight mouth. My car is not going to like this, she muttered. You can wait it out, Noah said. The roof mostly holds. He flicked off the radio. The drumming of the rain on the metal and glass filled the space. The sound had its own rhythm, a loose percussion that underlined the quiet. They ended up at the same upright again. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch under the faded quilt, one arm thrown over her face, the other dangling toward the floor. A forgotten crayon lay near her fingers. Claire's jacket hung on a hook by the door, dripping slowly into a tray. She had rolled up the sleeves of her shirt. The thin gold watch on her wrist looked almost out of place against the nicked wood of the bench. They worked through the opening phrase once more. Then Noah closed the lid over the keys. Enough for today, he said. Your shoulders are going to sue you. She let out a breath that might have been a laugh. They already did, and she said. They settled as tight knots. Silence settled between them, but it was not awkward. It was filled with the rain, with Lily's soft breathing, with the faint tick of a clock somewhere in the back. Julian wanted to leave this city, she said suddenly. Her eyes stayed on the closed keyboard fingers, tracing the edge of the wood. He wanted us to go west. California, maybe? Somewhere the air felt less heavy. He said he could write better if he did not feel the weight of all these buildings. Noah listened. His hands rested loosely on his knees. I told him he was being ridiculous, she continued, that he could not just chase some idea of clean air and start over. I had an internship lined up, a whole path. He said the path was the problem, that it was too straight. She swallowed. We had a fight, the morning of the accident, not a big one. We were both tired. We said small, sharp things. She lifted her shoulders and let them drop. The last words I said to him were unkind. I have replayed them so many times that they sound like noise now, but this song stayed quiet. Until you played it. The rain hammered harder on the roof, then softened. I thought if I made everything in my life straight and sharp and controlled, I could keep anything messy from happening again, she said. I thought if I cut out music, I could cut out the part of me that made bad choices. Her mouth twisted. It was a bad theory. A very understandable one, Noah said. She looked at him. You sound like you have tried something similar. He considered, then nodded. When my wife got sick, I spent a long time trying to bargain with the universe in my head, he said. If I worked more, if I did not work at all, if I played in the hospital room, if I did not touch the piano for weeks, as if some combination of actions could shift the outcome. Did you stop playing? She asked. For a while, he said. Then one night, Lily, who was barely 2, slapped her hands on the keys and scared herself. She started crying. I picked her up and tried to show her it was not a monster, that it could make soft sounds too. He glanced at the sleeping child. She stopped crying quicker than I did. The corner of Claire's mouth nudged upward. So you started again. I realized the piano was not what hurt me, he said. Losing someone did. They are not the same. She studied him, eyes narrowing slightly. You said something like that in the hallway, she said. At the hotel. Music does not hurt you. Memories do. Something close to that. Something close, he agreed. What if the memories are tied to the music so tightly that they are the same thing? She asked. Then maybe you let them sit in the same room for a while, he said. See if they stop fighting. She looked down at her hands at the faint indent where a ring might have been if she had chosen a different life. I have spent 12 years pretending the room was empty, she said. Seems pretty crowded from where I am sitting, he replied. She gave him a long, tired look. Then she laughed quietly. You are annoyingly calm, she said. It is a side effect of spending most of my hours arguing with pieces of wood, he answered. People are less stubborn than pianos. That is not true, she said. He tilted his head in acknowledgement. You might be right. The rain began to ease the drumbeat, turning to an occasional patter. Light seeped back through the high windows, blurred but present. Claire stood and walked to the door, watching the street for a moment. Drops still clung to the glass, distorting the view of the opposite building into wavering lines. She turned back toward the shop, toward the pianos, toward the couch where Lily slept, one sock slipping off her heel. You know, she said, if I told anyone at work where I am right now, they would not believe me. That might be a sign you need better stories, Noah said. She shook her head, smiling despite herself. Or different places to be. She came back to the bench and sat again, a little closer than before. Her sleeve brushed his. Neither of them moved away. Rain kept coming that week, on and off, as if the sky had forgotten how to commit to one thing. Claire kept coming too. Some afternoons, she appeared in the doorway of Mercer Piano Works with her hair still immaculate and a laptop bag on her shoulder. Other days, she arrived in flats and a softer blouse, the lines of her suit jacket traded for a long coat that looked almost comfortable. Each time the bell chimed and the shop took her in, she usually stayed by the upright at the back, the one that had become their small, uneven bridge between worlds. Noah would finish whatever he had in his hands, brush the dust from his fingers, and join her on the bench. They worked on the same few bars over and over, her right hand at first, then left. He would count guide correct when she slipped, but mostly he watched for the small changes in her face when a phrase came out clean. The brief light there, quick and unguarded. Lily moved in and out of these afternoons like her own piece of music. She would do homework at the workbench, tongue stuck between her teeth as she wrote. She would read on the couch under the quilt legs, kicking the air. She would hum bits of the melody without realizing it, blending it with jingles from television and songs from school. One day she stood in front of the upright, with Noah's old phone in both hands, recording as Claire played the opening line all the way through without stopping. You did it, Lily announced when the last note settled. Wait, I have to show you. She jabbed at the screen with a thumb until the video played back. The sound was tinny, the image slightly shaky, but Claire's hands were there moving over the keys. Her face was half visible in the frame, mouth pressed in concentration. You sound like a real pianist, Lily said. Let us not go that far, Claire replied. But she watched the screen until the clip ended. Lily frowned at the phone. There is a crack, she said, turning it so Claire could see a jagged line running across the corner of the glass. Screens can break and still work, Claire said. It is inconvenient, not fatal. She caught the way Noah glanced at her at that. Something in his eyes acknowledged more than the phone. The next time she came, she brought a white box with a bakery logo on it. She set it carefully on the workbench. Lunch, she said. If you can call this lunch. Inside were neatly arranged pastries and small sandwiches, each wrapped in paper that crinkled softly when Noah picked it up. You know you do not have to do this, he said. I am aware, she answered. I am trying to do something unnecessary. Lily took a bite of a sandwich, chewed thoughtfully, then squinted up at Claire. You are different here, she decided. You smile more. Noah coughed into his coffee. Claire raised one eyebrow. Different from where? She asked. From the TV, Lily said. On TV you look like you could tell a dragon what to do. Maybe the dragon needed a schedule, Claire replied. Are you a superhero? Lily asked. Noah started to intervene, but Claire beat him to it. In my office, some people like to pretend I am, she said. Out there, I am mostly a person who signs documents and stares at glass. Glass is boring, Lily said. Wood is better. This is better. You can draw on it. She rapped her knuckles on the side of the nearest piano. Please do not draw on this, Noah said. I know, Lily sighed. You like your boring wood. She hopped off the stool and went to look for her crayons anyway. At Arden Dynamics, the days did not slow for any of this. On the 20th floor, the hum of business continued under bright lights and the steady glow of monitors. People moved from desk to meeting room to coffee machine, and backheads bent over screens, phones held to ears. Victor Lang watched it all from his glass-walled office, a view that gave him a clear line to Claire's door and the desk outside it where Grace sat. He stepped out into the hallway one afternoon just as Claire's door closed behind her. Her coat was over her arm bag in hand. Heading out, Victor asked. Site visit, Claire said. I will be on email. Which site? He asked, tone casual. Brooklyn, she said. A potential partner in artisan restoration. It ties to the community outreach initiative. I will send you a summary once I have something solid. His expression did not change, but something sharpened in his gaze. You've been doing a lot of off-site reviews lately, and he said, it is good to stay close to the ground. I agree, she replied. He watched her walk away, the heels of her shoes soft on the carpet. Later that day, he stopped by Grace's desk. She has been out a lot, he said, as if chatting. Grace kept her eyes on her screen. She is working, Grace said. She is always working. Ever the loyal one, Victor said. I admire that. He leaned a hand on the edge of the desk. Still, if there's a pattern in her schedule, I should know, he added softly. The board will ask. It is better if I have an answer. Grace hesitated. Her fingers paused above the keyboard. She has been spending time in Brooklyn, Grace said at last. Beyond that, I do not have details. In Brooklyn, doing what? Victor asked. She said she is considering investments in small manufacturing and crafts, Grace said. I am not in those meetings. Victor smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Thank you, he said. If you see anything that looks unusual, let me know. These are volatile times. When he turned back toward his office, the glass reflected his face in pale duplication. For a moment, one of the reflections looked less like a colleague and more like a hawk circling. Back in the shop, no one talked about boards or volatility. They talked about tempo and timing and whether Lily's sock had any chance of staying on her foot if she kept spinning on the wooden floor. Slow down, Noah told her when she almost collided with a stack of music stands. I am practicing my turns, she said. If I get dizzy enough, I will see the music. That is not how it works, he said. How do you know? Lily shot back. Claire watched them with a half smile, her fingers idly playing the first 3 notes of the melody over and over. You keep doing that, Noah said, nodding at her hand. Doing what? Stopping at the same place, he said, like you are afraid of the next note. Maybe I am, she said. He did not push her. He just played the next note himself, a simple step up in the scale, letting the sound hang there invitingly. Whenever you are ready, he said. She eyed the key as if it might move on its own. Then she pressed it firmly. The phrase resolved not fully, but a little more than before. At the end of one long afternoon, after Claire had left in a hurry to make a call with Singapore, Noah stayed behind in the quiet. The upright she used sat with its front panel still removed, exposing the tangle of felt hammers and wooden levers inside. He cleaned up the scraps of cloth and the tools scattered nearby, then leaned in to check a stubborn key that had been sticking all week. He ran his fingers along the wooden rail, feeling for any rough spots. His hand caught on something carved into the frame, a shallow groove under his fingertips, too deliberate to be damage. He angled a lamp closer. There, burned lightly into the wood, was a small compass design. North, south, east, west, marked by tiny triangles, and the letter W was a touch deeper than the other lines. Noah frowned. He had seen that symbol somewhere else. He went to the shelf and pulled down a cardboard box filled with old paperwork. Purchase receipts, tuning records, delivery slips from years back when he had first bought the shop and inherited its history. He sifted through brittle pages until he found a yellowing folder marked with the same neat hand that had written the hotel's invoice long before he ever played there. Inside was a photocopy of a sales agreement, an address up the river in the Hudson Valley, the name on the line for the sellers. West. He sat down heavily on the nearest stool. The crest on the piano, the surname, the hand that had written bridge left uncrossed. A pattern emerged clear and inescapable. This upright had once stood in Julian West's house. The realization sent a strange chill up his spine. The instrument in the corner of his modest shop, with Lily's drawings taped to its side, and Claire's fingerprints invisibly layered on its keys, had once belonged to the life she had been grieving since she was 18. He sat for a long time, the papers spread out in front of him, the rain tapping lightly on the glass. The implications pressed at him. He could tell her. She had a right to know that the last piece of her past was sitting here in Brooklyn, reassembled key by key. He imagined her face, the way it had looked in the hallway at the hotel, the day she had first cried in this room, the way she had just started to laugh more often than not when Lily said something strange. His chest tightened. It was one thing to give someone back a song. It was another to drop an entire room of memory on them all at once. He picked up the sales record again, read the date of the transaction. Years ago, long after the accident, a family house, cleared furniture, sold off. The world had moved the piano along without telling her. Noah placed the record back in the folder, closed it, and slid it into the box. He put the box on the highest shelf, next to a stack of old music manuals and a jar of loose screws. He stood at the bench, hands on either side of the exposed keys, and closed his eyes. He would fix the broken action. He would tune the strings. He would keep the instrument alive. He would wait. Wait until she was steady enough. Wait until he knew how to say it in a way that did not break her. In the apartment above the shop, Lily rolled over in her sleep, muttering something about bridges and dragons. Her small hand found the edge of her blanket and pulled it closer. In a glass tower across the river, Victor reviewed Claire's calendar on his tablet and noted every entry that did not have a corporate address attached. The city moved around all of them. Lights came on in windows. Subways shuddered through tunnels. Snowmelt dripped from roofs to sidewalks. In the middle of a quiet Brooklyn street, in a narrow shop that smelled of wood and polish, a piano that had crossed one family's history without permission waited in the shadows, its crest hidden just inside the frame. The first time Claire played the opening section clean all the way through, no one spoke for a second. Her fingers hovered above the keys as the last note faded into the shop's familiar air. Noah watched the way her shoulders remained tense, as if she did not quite believe what she had just done. Lily broke the silence. "You did it," she said from her perch on the workbench. "You really did it." Claire let out a breath she had been holding. "It is 4 bars, she said. "Not exactly a symphony." 4 bars more than yesterday," Noah said. There was a quiet satisfaction in his voice that warmed the space more than the heater humming in the corner. Lily hopped down and rushed over. "Play it again," she said. "I want to see if it sounds the same." "It's supposed to sound the same," Claire said. "Exactly," Lily replied. She set Noah's phone up on the edge of the piano, lining the cracked screen carefully, and hit record. Claire groaned, but positioned her hands again. "Fine," she said. "One more time." She played. The line came out smoother now, the notes flowing one into the other with fewer hitching pauses. When she finished, Lily hit stop and spun the phone around. "Your eyebrows do this thing," Lily said, frowning at the tiny video. "They scrunch up when you are thinking." "That is their job," Claire said. "Expression. They are overachievers." Lily laughed. The sound bounced slightly off the walls. Later, in a glass conference room high above the river, Claire sat opposite Victor with a different kind of chart on the table between them. "This is the stock movement over the last quarter," Victor said, tapping the line that zigzagged across the screen. "Notice these dips." He expanded the graph with his fingers. The dips grew teeth. They coincide with the rumor cycle about the trial, the regulatory noise, and more recently chatter about your personal schedule. "My schedule," Claire repeated. "You have been less visible on site," Victor said. "More trips off campus. The market reacts to uncertainty. They like the impression that their leader is fully engaged." "My calendar is full," she said. "Engagement is not a problem." "I'm not questioning your work ethic," he replied. "I am pointing out that perception can shift quickly." His words were smooth, but there was a hint of pressure underneath. "You and I both know how fragile confidence is," he added. "You have built this company with a certain image. Any sign that you are distracted or entangled in something personal, and they will imagine cracks where there are none." She met his gaze. "If the board has concerns, they can bring them to me directly," she said. "Until then, I will manage my time as needed." "Of course," Victor said, leaning back. "I'm only trying to anticipate questions before they come." She closed the laptop on the graph. "You have my forecasts," she said. "Those numbers are not uncertain." He smiled thin and professional. "No," he said. "They are not." Outside the conference room, as she walked back toward her office, Claire's phone vibrated with a new notification. Her fingers twitched toward it, but she waited until she was alone behind her own glass wall before taking it out. Lily had sent her a row of crooked emojis from Noah's phone and a blurry photo of a piano key with a smiley face drawn on it in marker. The accompanying text clearly dictated read. "Hi, this is Lily. Miss Claire, the piano misses you. Also, Dad says hi, but he did not type it." Claire felt the corner of her mouth lift despite herself. She stared at the message for a few seconds, then slipped the phone back into her pocket. Outside her office, she could see the reflection of Victor talking to another board member in the hallway. Their heads bent close, their expressions unreadable behind the glass. That night, as the city lights thickened in the windows and email alerts slowed to a trickle, she opened her calendar and stared at the blocks of color that defined her days. Meetings, calls, deadlines, every square inch accounted for. Her gaze tracked the few entries that simply read Brooklyn. No further detail. Her fingers hovered over the delete key. Instead, she clicked on tomorrow and carved out 2 hours. The next afternoon, she arrived at the shop with a coat wrapped tightly around her and an edge to her posture that Noah noticed before she said a word. "You look like someone rearranged your entire day without asking," he said. "Someone tried," she answered. He waited, but she did not fill the silence. She hung her coat on the hook and moved toward the back. "I cannot stay long," she said. "There is a board call tomorrow. They are already sharpening their questions." "We can run through the opening once," he suggested. "Then you go terrify executives." "I do not terrify anyone," she said. He lifted an eyebrow, and she let out a short, humorless laugh. "Fine," she said. "Maybe a few." They settled at the upright. The front panel of the piano was still off from his last round of repairs, leaving the inner workings exposed. Felt hammers lined up like teeth. Wooden levers wires the complex skeleton that usually stayed hidden. "Do not lean on that edge," he said. "It is not meant to hold your weight." "I will try not to break your precious antique," she said. "It is not an antique," he replied. "It is barely older than me." She placed her fingers on the keys. The first note came easily now, so did the second. Her hands remembered the spacing, her ear guided the timing. It was not effortless, but it was no longer a fight. Noah watched her from the corner of his vision, ready to step in if she faltered. She did not. She reached the end of the written phrase and for a heartbeat almost pushed further into the blank space. Her fingers hovered over the next key, then pulled back. "Not today," she said quietly. He let it go. As she shifted on the bench, her attention snagged on something inside the piano. A dark shape carved into the pale wood of the exposed frame, only partially visible from where she sat. "What is that?" she asked. Noah followed her line of sight. "Probably just an old maker's mark," he said. "Many builders used to brand their work." She stood up to see it better, stepping closer. Her hand braced on the narrow lip of the open case. The carved symbol sat just above the action, burned into the grain. A small compass designed its points, simple but precise. The letter W at the center, stylized in a way that made it look almost like a pair of intertwined lines. Her breath caught. She reached out and touched the crest with the pad of her index finger. The grooves under her skin were shallow, but undeniable. "He did this," she said, barely audible. Noah frowned. "Who?" he asked. "Julian," she said. Her voice had gone thin. "He carved this into everything he considered part of his world. His sketchbooks, his guitar case, the beam under his bedroom window." She swallowed. "This was in his parents' living room, on the piano. He did it when he was 14, and his mother almost killed him for burning the wood." She turned slowly to face Noah. "Where did you get this piano?" she asked. He wiped his palms on his jeans, suddenly aware of how dry his mouth felt. "It came in a few months ago," he said. "From a house north of the city, estate sale from what the delivery slip said." Her eyes sharpened. "You told me last week you checked the tuning records," she said. "Did you see the family name?" He hesitated just long enough for her to see it. "Yes," he said. "West," she said, not asking. He nodded. "For how long have you known?" she asked. Her tone had changed completely. The warmth from a few minutes ago had drained away, leaving something rawer underneath. "A little while," he said, "since I found the crest and checked the old files." "A little while," she repeated. "How long is a little?" He thought back. The days had blurred, but he could count backwards by visits, by lessons, by rainstorms. "A few weeks," he said. She stared at him. "You knew," she said. "You knew this was his, that this is the piano from his house." "It was his family's," Noah said carefully. "I did not know for certain until I saw the paperwork. And you decided not to tell me." "I decided to wait," he said. "You were barely holding yourself together with the song. Dropping this on you felt like it could break you." Her laugh was sharp. "Break me," she said. "Do you think I have not already been broken?" "Yes," he said quietly. "That is why I wanted to be careful." "You wanted control," she snapped, "over how and when I get to face my own past." He shook his head. "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" she asked. "From knowing that the last thing he touched is sitting in a room where I have been coming almost every day, where your daughter hums what he wrote. You kept that from me. You listened to me talk about him and you kept it." His hands curled against his legs. "I thought if we could get you to a place where the music did not crush you, the truth about the piano would be less of a hit," he said. "I thought time might make it softer." "You thought," she said. "You decided, you and your good intentions." Her eyes were bright now, not from gentle tears, but from anger that had been waiting for a target. "You do not get to choose the speed of my grief," she said. "You do not get to portion it out in doses you think I can handle." He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was no argument he could make that did not sound like an excuse. "I am sorry," he said. "I misjudged." "You lied," she said. "I did not lie," he replied. "I kept something back." "In this context, that is the same thing," she said. There was a rustle from the back stair. Lily had appeared halfway down, hand on the rail, sensing the tension, but not understanding its content. "Dad," she began. Noah held up a hand without looking at her. "Later, Lil," he said. She froze on the step, eyes wide, then sank down to sit, arms wrapped around her knees, watching. Claire's gaze flicked briefly toward the movement, then back to Noah. "I trusted you," she said. "And that is not a sentence I say often." "I know," he said. "You said this music was not yours to sell," she said. "You were right. It is not. It is also not yours to manage like a fund." He winced at the metaphor because it fit. It came from her world, and he had stepped into it without enough care. "I thought I could spare you," he said. "You thought you could spare yourself the guilt of being the one to hurt me," she said. "You failed on both counts." Her words were not shouted. They did not need to be. Quiet, precise anger cut cleaner. She backed away from the piano from the exposed crest from his outstretched hand. "Do not touch me," she said when he took a step forward. He stopped. "I cannot look at this room right now," she said. She grabbed her coat from the hook, pulling the fabric around her like armor. Lily scrambled up and pressed herself against the wall as Claire moved past. At the door, Claire hesitated just long enough to get the words out. "You had no right," she said. The bell chimed when she left. The sound was thin and almost cheerful, at odds with the heaviness that dropped into the space behind her. Lily crept down the remaining steps. "Dad," she whispered. He sank onto the bench in front of the upright. The piano's open insides stared back at him, silent. "I should have told her," he said, more to himself than to Lily. Lily edged closer. "Is she mad because of the song?" But she asked. "She is mad because I kept a truth from her," he answered. "Can you fix it?" Lily asked. He looked at the crest, at the faint marks of a knife from years ago. "I do not know," he said. That night, in a different part of the city, Victor sat at his desk with the blinds half closed against the office lights. His tablet glowed on the polished surface. On it, a series of blurred photos showed Claire stepping out of a black SUV in Brooklyn, entering a narrow shop, leaving hours later with her face turned toward the ground. Another image, captured outside the Aurora Crown, showed her gripping a pianist's wrist by the grand piano. The flash had washed the scene in harsh white. It still caught the intensity in her eyes. A message thread sat open along one side of the screen. An unnamed contact had sent the photos with a brief note. "Thought you might want to see where your CEO spends her afternoons." Victor tapped the screen, enlarging one picture. Claire's face, halfway between anger and something else, filled the frame. He did not smile exactly. His lips thinned. He opened a new email and attached 2 of the photos. "To senior finance correspondent at Maziam Gonsamant at a major business network. Subject off the record, Arden's Ice Queen and her Brooklyn distraction." He typed, carefully choosing words that implied more than they stated outright. Concern about leadership stability, questions about entanglements, phrases like blue-collar companion and emotional volatility. When he hit send, the message slipped out into the digital currents with the same quiet as any other email. The next morning, Noah sat at a corner table in a diner a few blocks from the shop, a mug of coffee cooling by his elbow, a plate of eggs untouched in front of him. The television mounted over the counter played a financial news channel with the volume low. Questions swirling around Arden Dynamics' celebrated CEO, Claire Arden, the anchor was saying. "New photos obtained by our partners appear to show Arden in an increasingly personal relationship with a piano technician in Brooklyn. Some investors are asking if this signals a distraction from her duties at the helm." A grainy image flashed on the screen. Claire leaving the shop. Noah holding the door. Another shot from the gala, her hand on his wrist, his face turned toward her in surprise. Text crawled along the bottom, Arden's Ice Queen, melting investors, worry about new distraction. Noah stared up at the screen. His own outline stared back. A waitress followed his gaze and frowned. "Is that you?" she asked. He did not answer right away. "It might be," he said. The camera cut to a panel of commentators, all of them talking at once about leadership optics and market confidence. To anyone who did not know him, he looked exactly like the story suggested. A man from a small shop, orbiting a powerful woman blurry on camera. Name captioned in a font that did not care who he was beyond the headline. He paid for his coffee with bills that shook slightly in his hand, left the eggs uneaten, and stepped out into the thin winter sun. On the way back to the shop, he passed a newsstand where the early edition of a financial paper was propped in a clear plastic case. The photo on the front page was the same. The headline was harsher on paper. He stood there on the sidewalk, hands deep in his pockets, watching strangers glance at the image, then turn the page. By the time Noah reached the shop, the headline had burned itself into his vision, like he had stared too long at the sun. He unlocked the door of Mercer Piano Works with fingers that did not feel quite steady. The bell chimed in its usual bright way, unaware that anything had changed. Inside, the air smelled the same. Wood varnish, a hint of coffee. It felt wrong that it could smell the same. He flipped the sign to closed, though it already was, and dropped the keys into the bowl by the door. They hit the ceramic with a sound that echoed more than it should have. On the workbench, Lily's homework was still spread out where she had left it the night before. Pencil marks, slightly smudged eraser trails. The upright at the back sat with its panel back on as if nothing inside it could surprise anyone anymore. Noah walked straight to the small cabinet under the stairs and pulled out an old duffel bag. It smelled faintly of engine oil and the lake where he used to take Lily when she was a toddler. He sat it on the floor and unzipped it, the sound loud in the quiet shop. His hands moved without thought, pulling clothes from the drawer under the counter. Jeans, shirts, socks. He folded them mechanically, more careful than the situation warranted, and packed them in tight. His mind kept replaying the anchor's voice, words like distraction and entangled and risk. None of those words had anything to do with what had happened in this room, but they were the ones the world would choose, Boyce said. He pictured Claire in her office watching the same broadcast, seeing his blurred outline next to hers, and having to answer for it in a language of numbers and shareholder concern. The idea sat in his chest like a stone. Above him the stairs creaked. Lily's small footsteps thumped their way down. She appeared at the bottom, hair wild from sleep, wearing a t-shirt with a cartoon whale on it. She rubbed one eye. "Dad," she said. "Why is the sign closed? It is morning." "We are not opening today," he said without looking up. "Are you sick?" he asked. "No." She watched him shove another shirt into the bag. "What are you doing?" she asked. He zipped out the side pocket and took a breath. "Packing," he said. "We might need to go away for a while." Her face shifted through confusion into something like worry. "A vacation?" she tried. "Like the beach?" "Not a vacation," he said. "Then what kind of a way, sir?" she asked. He sat back on his heels and finally looked at her. Her socks did not match. One had strawberries, the other had stars. "The kind where people stop taking pictures of us," he said. She frowned. "Who is taking pictures?" she asked. "Mrs. Patel." "No," he said. "Not Mrs. Patel." He walked to the counter and picked up the paper he had bought on the way back, folded tightly under his arm. He hesitated, then unfolded it and laid it face up where she could see. Her eyes went straight to the photo. Claire's profile, his own outline behind her. "That is you," she said. "And Miss Claire?" "Yes," he said. "Why are you on the front?" she asked. "Because some people like to make stories out of things they do not understand," he said. She studied the caption, lips moving, as she sounded out the longer words. "Ice Queen," she read slowly. "Melting, that is dumb." He almost smiled. "They are saying mean things about her," he said. "They do not know her," Lily said. "She is nice. She eats the weird sandwiches you buy. She lets me draw her." "I know," he said. He folded the paper again and slid it aside. "If we stay," he said, "they may keep saying worse things. They may try harder to hurt her." "So you want to go," she said. "It might make it easier for her," he said. The words tasted wrong as he said them. Easier and right rarely went together in real ways. He took the duffel upstairs, Lily following close behind, questions piling up behind her teeth. He packed her small clothes into a second bag, setting aside the rabbit and her favorite books. On his nightstand, next to an alarm clock and a chipped mug, sat the leather folder with the copied sheet music inside. He picked it up, thumb resting on the worn edge. For a moment, he thought about leaving it here, letting someone else find it in another lifetime. Then he imagined Claire walking into the shop, finding the room empty, the piano silent, the music gone. He placed the folder gently on the bed. Downstairs, he pulled a pad of paper toward him and wrote a note. The pen hovered over the first line, longer than it had any right to. "Claire, there are people who want to use me to hurt you. If I'm not here, they lose that tool. I'm leaving, so they stop. Thank you for letting the music live again. Noah." He stared at the words. They looked thin, even on the page. They did not hold everything he wanted to say. They held the piece that sounded most like sacrifice and least like fear. He folded the note once and slid it between the leather cover of the folder and the front page of the copied sheet. He would have someone deliver it. Or he would mail it, or he would not. He could not decide. Behind him, Lily shifted from one foot to the other. "Dad," she said. He turned. "Yeah." She held her rabbit by one ear, the other ear missing entirely, the fabric worn smooth in places from years of fingers. "If we go," she asked, "does Miss Claire still come here?" "No," he said. "If we go, there is no point in her coming." "Then how will she play the song?" Lily asked. "She will not," he said. "How will she laugh?" Lily said. He blinked. "What do you mean?" he asked. "When she first came," Lily said, "she did not laugh. Her mouth was all straight. Then she started laughing when I said things, like about dragons, and about rich people sandwiches." She hugged the rabbit closer. "If we leave, she will not laugh in here anymore," she said. "And there is nowhere else she laughs?" "You do not know that," he said gently. "Do you?" she asked. He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He saw Claire at the upright eyebrows drawn, then suddenly breaking into an unguarded smile when she missed a note, and swore under her breath. He saw her head tilted back when Lily told her she looked like a superhero. He saw her shoulders drop every time she walked into the shop, like she had been holding up a ceiling all day, and could finally stop. He thought of the headline again. The tight way her jaw must have set when she saw it, the looks from her board, the questions from people who thought they owned her time. Leaving would remove one problem. It would not remove the weight. He looked down at the duffel bag. It looked small and ridiculous, now stuffed with folded clothes, and the idea that distance could erase damage. In his chest, something turned over heavy as a piano, but more alive. "Maybe running is not protecting," he said quietly. "What?" Lily asked. He shook his head more at himself than at her. "Nothing," he said. Not yet. He walked back to the bed, picked up the leather folder, and pulled out the note. He read it one more time, then tore it in half. Then in half again. The pieces fluttered into the trash basket like brittle leaves. Lily watched him. "Are we still going?" she asked. "No," he said. Her face lit up with relief. "Good," she said. "I do not want to pack my books again." He laughed a short burst that cleared something in his throat. "We might still have to go places," he said. "But not like this." He carried the duffel bag back downstairs and set it by the cabinet, not as an escape route, but as a reminder of a choice not taken. On the counter, the paper still lay folded. He opened it again, studied the photo. The frame caught him mid-motion, head turned toward Claire, her hand on his wrist. To the outside world, it looked like drama. To him, it had been a beginning. He grabbed his phone. He did not have Claire's personal number. They had never traded that particular piece of information. Their connection had existed in shared space and sound, not in contact lists. He scrolled through old emails until he found one from the hotel that had included her assistant's contact information. Grace's email address sat there, neat and unsuspecting. He typed quickly. "Grace, I'm sure you have seen the coverage this morning. I know it may have consequences for Claire. I need to speak to the board. Noah Mercer." He hesitated, then added his phone number at the bottom and hit send. It felt like dropping a note into the ocean. For a few minutes, nothing happened. He straightened the bench, stacked the scattered sheet music, tried to focus on the tactile tasks of his shop. His phone buzzed on the counter. A new message popped up from an unknown number. "This is Grace. Claire is in meetings. The board has called an emergency session tomorrow at 9. If you really want to speak to them, that would be the time." Another message followed a few seconds later. "Security is tight. Say you are a scheduled presenter. Use your full name." He stared at the screen. He typed back and said back, "Thank you." He set the phone down gently as if it might shatter under its own weight. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Who was that?" she asked. "A friend of Ms. Claire's," he said. "She told me when some important people will be in the same room." "Are you going to yell at them?" Lily asked. "No," he said. "I am going to talk to them." "About what?" she asked. He looked around the shop, at the upright with its hidden crest, at the bench where Claire had sat, at the pile of torn note in the trash, at Lily's small shoes lined up by the door. "About her," he said. "And about us, and about music. We will see which words show up." Lily nodded solemnly as if this made perfect sense. "Do you need to wear a tie?" she asked. He glanced at his closet in his mind and pictured the lone tie hanging there, slightly wrinkled from disuse. "Probably," he said. She wrinkled her nose. "Ties are weird," she said. "They are," he agreed. He closed the shop early that evening. After dinner, he sat on the couch while Lily built a bridge between two chairs with her blocks narrating the journey of an imaginary traveler. "The bridge is wobbly," she said, "but if he's brave, he can still cross." Noah watched the small colored pieces tremble under the weight of a toy car, then hold. In his mind, glass and wood and polished stone came together in a different set of lines. The lobby of Arden Dynamics, the gleam of its logo, the eyes of men and women in suits who had the power to move numbers that could crush someone like Claire or hold her up. He would walk into that building with nothing but what he knew of her in this room. Her stubbornness, her honesty, the way she kept showing up when it would have been easier not to. It did not feel like enough. It would have to be. The next morning, he woke before the alarm. The sky outside his window was a pale blank. The city sounded muted as if holding its breath. He dressed in his one good shirt, the collar a little tight. He knotted the tie with fingers that remembered more from weddings and funerals than from anything in between. Lily sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs. "Do you have to go now?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Mrs. Patel will take you to school." She hopped down and came to him, placing her hands on either side of the knot of his tie. "You look like those people on TV," she said. "The ones who say the numbers." "I am going to talk to people who like numbers," he said. "Tell them Miss Claire is nice," Lily said, "and that they should not be mean to her." "I will," he said. "Tell them you fix things," she added. He smiled. "I will try." On the subway into Manhattan, he stood, pressed among commuters, in coats and headphones. He could smell coffee and perfume and the faint tang of subway metal. An ad above the door flashed a slogan about courage and investment. He looked at his hands. They were the same hands that had lifted hammers and replaced broken keys, that had held Lily when she cried, that had shown Claire where to place her fingers on the piano. He tightened them once, then let them relax. When he stepped out into the cold air near Arden Dynamics, the building rose above him in clean lines of glass and steel. The logo shone near the top bright against the pale morning sky. The revolving door at the entrance spun steadily as people slipped in and out, badges ready, coffee cups in hand. Noah took a breath, walked across the cold stone of the plaza, and joined the flow. The lobby of Arden Dynamics felt like the inside of a polished shell. Everything echoed just a little. The ceiling arched high above the security desk. Light from the glass facade poured over the marble floor, reflecting off stainless steel and the faint sheen of people's shoes. Noah wiped his palms on his coat and stepped up to the front counter. A man in a suit with a laminated badge looked up from his screen. "Good morning," the guard said. "Name and appointment." "Noah Mercer," he replied. "I saw him here for the board session. I am scheduled to present." The words tasted strange in his mouth, like lines borrowed from someone else's script. Grace's message sat in the back of his mind like a steady hand. The guard checked the monitor. "I do not see you on the visitor list," he said. "I was added late," Noah said. Grace Chu coordinated it. The guard's eyes flicked to a second screen. "I can call up," he said. "Please," Noah replied. He stood there, feeling the weight of the building above him. Glass and steel and decisions stacked on top of one another. The guard picked up the phone, spoke quietly, listened, then looked back at Noah with a different expression. "You are cleared," he said. "Elevator bank B, top floor. Someone will meet you there." Noah exhaled once a short breath he had not realized he was holding. The security gate clicked open. He walked through. The elevator walls were brushed metal, his faint reflection distorted in them. As the car climbed, his ears popped. He watched the floor numbers light up one by one. A woman beside him adjusted her blazer eyes on her phone. A man checked his watch twice. At the top floor, the doors opened onto thick carpet and quieter air. The noise of the city dropped away. Here, the hum came from closed doors and conversations behind glass. Grace waited near the reception desk, a tablet in one hand, a folder in the other. She wore a dark dress and a look that was very close to calm. "Mr. Mercer," she said. "Thank you for answering my message," he said. "I'm not certain I will keep my job after this, ma'am," she said, "so I thought I might as well do something useful on the way." "Is she inside?" he asked. "Yes," Grace said. The board convened early. She nodded toward a set of double doors at the end of the corridor. Frosted glass, a strip of light showing at the bottom. The Arden Dynamics logo gleamed on the wall beside them. "They are in full defense mode," she said. "You will not get long." "Long is not what I am good at," he said. She gave him a quick assessing look, then reached out and straightened his tie. "At least you look like you belong here," she said. He smiled faintly. "That is a first." She stepped back. "When you go in," she said, "do not apologize for existing." He nodded. "Thanks," he said. He walked down the corridor. The carpet muted his footsteps. His hand was steady when he pushed open the boardroom door. Inside, a long table of dark wood cut the room in half. High-backed chairs flanked it. At the far end, floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, the river a flat line beyond. Screens mounted on the wall showed charts, headlines, snapshots from networks that had been looping the same story for 24 hours. Claire's face appeared in some of them, caught mid-stride, mid-glance. His own outline hovered at the edges. Around the table sat the board. Men and women in suits of varying shades, hair silver, or perfectly groomed. At the head of the table, the chairman, a man in his 60s with careful posture, had his hands clasped. Victor sat 3 seats down on the left tablet in front of him, expression composed. Claire was on the right side, halfway down. She wore a slate gray suit, hair pulled back tighter than usual. A glass of water sat in front of her, untouched. Her face was set in a neutral line, but there was an exhaustion around her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Every head turned toward Noah as the door closed behind him. The chairman frowned. "This is a closed session," he said. "Who are you?" "Noah Mercer," he said. "You may know me as the distraction." A small ripple went through the room. Someone exhaled sharply. Someone else muttered under their breath. Claire's head snapped up. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second when she saw him, then narrowed uncertainty and something like warning competing in her expression. "Mr. Mercer is not on the agenda," Victor said. "Security must have made an error." "Security did what they were told," Grace said from the doorway. She stood there, a quiet figure framed by glass and wood. "I scheduled him as a presenter," she added. The chairman's gaze shifted between Noah, Grace, and Claire. "Why?" he asked. "Because his name is on our front page more often than some of our products at the moment," Grace said. "It seems strange to talk about him without hearing from him." Victor's jaw tightened. "This is irregular," he said. "So is having our CEO's private life spread across every business channel," one of the older board members said dryly. The chairman tapped his fingers once on the table. "Fine," he said. "Mr. Mercer, you have 5 minutes. Use them carefully." Noah stepped closer to the table. He could feel the weight of every gaze. It was like standing under stage lights, except no one here wanted to be entertained. "I am not here to defend myself," he said. "You are free to think whatever you want about a man who restores pianos in Brooklyn and happens to know someone who runs a company like this." He let his voice stay level, let the steadiness do the work. I am here because I have seen a version of Claire Arden that you might not be able to see from this room, he said. Victor made a small dismissive sound. Ms. Arden's professional performance is not in question, Victor said. Her judgment is. Is it? Noah asked. He nodded toward one of the screens where a chart of Arden's stock price hovered over an image of Claire with the word storm in bold letters beneath it. In the last few months, while this story was supposedly brewing, he said, she closed a renewable energy acquisition that 3 other companies could not land. She negotiated a licensing deal that will keep you ahead of at least 2 competitors. She has continued to run this place while every camera that can is pointed at her face. He looked at the chairman. I work with broken things, he said. Instruments people give up on. I take them apart, I see where they cracked, and I decide if they can still sing. What I see when I look at her is not someone falling apart. I see someone who has been carrying a weight most people could not lift and still showing up. One of the board members, a woman with iron gray hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. Mercer, she said, are you aware that this situation has raised concerns about her focus? I am, he said. I have heard the words distraction and entangled more times than I care to count. He let his gaze flick briefly to Victor, then back to the woman. When she comes to my shop, he said, she is not distracted. She is working. Not on a spreadsheet on herself, on the part of her that she shut down when she was 18 and someone she loved died. She cut off anything that looked like vulnerability and built this company on the idea that if she never let herself feel again, nothing could hurt her. A murmur passed around the table. That strategy has served you, he said. You have all benefited from it. Profits, reputation, influence. Now you are worried because she has found a small space where she can breathe in a different way. He rested his hands lightly on the back of an empty chair. If anything, the time she has spent in my shop has made her more present, not less, he said. She is less brittle, more precise. She laughs sometimes. She still checks her phone too often. She answers emails between scales. A faint chuckle escaped one of the younger members. It faded quickly. I understand you are worried about numbers, he continued. But numbers are not made by machines. They are made by people. People who follow someone. People do not follow a statue. They follow a human being. He let that settle. You have a leader who has proven she can make hard calls while carrying unprocessed grief, he said. Imagine what she could do if she's allowed to be whole. For a moment, nobody said anything. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Victor cleared his throat. This is very moving, he said. However, we cannot run a public company on sentiment. I am not asking you to, Noah said. I am asking you to look beyond a handful of photographs and ask whether the story they tell matches the reality of the woman sitting at this table. His eyes found Claire's. She is not melting, he said. She is healing. Something in her expression shifted. Some inner muscle that had been clenched for a long time loosened just a fraction. The chairman leaned back. Miss Arden, he said, do you have anything to add? She had been very still the whole time Noah spoke, hands folded, gaze on the table in front of her. Now she lifted her head. Yes, she said. Her voice was clear. It did not shake. I have spent 12 years making sure no one could ever accuse me of having a life outside of this company, she said. I have outworked doubt, outthought competitors, and outrun my own exhaustion. She looked down the length of the table, making sure to meet each pair of eyes. I did that because it was the only way I knew to stay upright after the person I loved died, she said. I turned myself into something sharp and cold. It was efficient. It was applauded. People gave it names. Ice Queen, Architect, Machine. Her gaze settled briefly on Victor, then moved on. I let you all believe that was who I really was, she said. I let myself believe it too. She drew a breath. In the last months, in a small shop in Brooklyn, in a room that smells like wood and glue instead of glass cleaner, I started to remember another version of myself. One who liked music, one who laughed easily, one who did not measure every word for how it might look in a headline. She placed her palms flat on the table. You are right that this has changed me, she said. If you see that as a threat, then we have a deeper problem than a few photographs. Someone shifted in their chair. The older woman with the sharp eyes watched her closely. You can fire me today, Claire said. You can call it breach of image or loss of focus or anything that looks good in a press release. The market will twitch, then adjust. You will find someone new who looks clean on paper and has nothing messy for anyone to point at. She straightened a fraction. Or you can accept that your CEO is a human being, she said. One who still delivers results even while learning how not to be numb. One who refuses to pretend that loneliness is a qualification. The last word hung in the air with more force than any chart. Victor opened his mouth. We are not questioning your ability to deliver, he began. Aren't you? She asked quietly. He faltered. The chairman cleared his throat. The purpose of this meeting, he said, was to determine whether recent events have compromised Ms. Arden's capacity to lead. He looked at the faces around the table. "We have heard from our subject and from an unexpected witness," he said. "We have seen the numbers. We have seen the coverage." His gaze lingered on one of the screens where a headline still scrolled. "Arden's Ice Queen melting. I left this morning's home deliveries on my kitchen counter," he said. Next to them was yesterday's financial section with a different headline. "Arden closes Solaris deal ahead of competitors." He tapped the table once. "I am more interested in the second." He turned to the board. "I propose that any motion to suspend or remove Ms. Arden be tabled at this time, sir," he said. "We will issue a statement affirming our confidence in her leadership and address questions as they arise." A murmur moved through the room. Some displeasure, some relief, some simple surprise. The older woman nodded. "I support that," she said. "We hired her for her ability to navigate storms, not to pose for still photographs." One by one, the others signaled agreement, or at least a lack of objection. Victor remained silent, his jaw tight. "So noted," the chairman said. "The motion is tabled." Abdi. A thin band of tension snapped in the air, unseen, but felt. The screens went dark as someone hit a remote. The room's focus shifted from pixels back to people. The chairman looked at Noah. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "thank you for your unconventional testimony." Noah inclined his head. "I will see myself out," he said. He turned toward the door. "Mr. Mercer," Claire's voice stopped him. He looked back. Her eyes held a complicated mix of things. Anger that had not fully cooled. Gratitude. Something softer threaded through both. "We are not done talking," she said. "No," he said. "We are not." He stepped out into the hallway. The door closed behind him with a soft click. In the corridor, Grace exhaled loudly. "I cannot believe that worked," she said. "It did not work," he said. "It just did not fail." She huffed a small laugh. "She will come out when they finish the formalities," Grace said. "You can wait there." She nodded toward a row of chairs near the windows. He sat. The glass beside him showed the city in full daylight traffic, ribboning along the avenues, the river a dull silver. His own reflection floated faintly over the scene, tie slightly crooked now. He loosened it a little and rested his elbows on his knees. His hands still shook just a little. It took a while for his breathing to slow. Inside the boardroom, muffled voices rose and fell, then they quieted. The door opened. People filed out in twos and threes, talking in low tones. A few glanced at him with curiosity or recognition, but none stopped. Claire appeared last. She stepped into the corridor, the door closing behind her. For a moment she stood there, back straight, the familiar armor of her posture still in place. Then her shoulders dropped a few centimeters, as if she had been holding something up and had finally set it down. They looked at each other. The hallway around them hummed with distant phones and soft footsteps, but it felt very still where they stood. "You did not have to do that," she said. "I did," he said. Her gaze searched his face as if measuring how much of that answer was truth, and how much was his own attempt at appearing brave. "I am still furious with you," she said. "About the piano, about the crest, about the decision you made for me." "I know," he said. "But," she added, and the single syllable carried more weight than any explanation. "Thank you." He nodded. "You are welcome," he said. The elevator ride down felt shorter than the ride up. Noah and Claire walked side by side through the lobby, neither speaking. The sound of their footsteps on the marble floor mixed with the soft echo of conversations and the hiss of the espresso machine at the corner kiosk. At the revolving door, they both paused. "You have to go back to your shop," she said. "You have to go back to running a company," he answered. Her mouth curved at one corner, a small, tired shape that was not quite a smile. "I am still angry," she said. "That has not changed." "I would worry if it had," he said. "But I do not want that to be the only thing between us," she added. He searched her face. "What do you want between us?" he asked. She looked past him through the glass at the street outside. Yellow cabs slid by, people hurried past with collars turned up. "I do not know yet," she said. "I know I want to decide it myself." "That is fair," he said. She nodded once. "Give me some time," she said. "Then if I walk into your shop again, you can try saying you are sorry in a way that does not involve protecting me from myself." He absorbed that. "I can do that," he said. "Good," she said. She walked away toward the bank of elevators that led to the executive garage. He stepped out through the revolving door into the cold. For a few days, the business networks feasted on the board's statement. The official line was calm and firm. Full confidence in Ms. Arden. No change in leadership. Focus on long-term strategy. Analysts spun it from every angle. Some said she had dodged a bullet. Others muttered about waiting for the next misstep. Inside Arden Dynamics, people kept their voices low in the hallways for a while. In the break room, a cluster of junior analysts watched a replay of the segment where she spoke about loneliness not being a qualification. She actually said that, one of them murmured. She is not wrong, another replied. Claire's days did not get lighter. If anything, they grew heavier. She fielded calls from major investors, sat through internal reviews, signed off on revised communication strategies. Yet small changes slipped in among the pressure. She began leaving her office door open for an hour each afternoon. People who had never spoken to her without an appointment started stopping by. An engineer with an idea about a product tweak. A manager worried about burnout in her team. She listened, fingers steepled under her chin, without checking her phone. Her calendar still had blocks marked Brooklyn. For a while she looked at them and did not move. Other days, urgent meetings filled the slots. The sticky note with Noah's address remained on the edge of her screen, edges curled. 3 weeks after the board session, on a gray Friday, when the clouds sat low over the city and the river looked like brushed metal, she found herself at the lobby security desk of Mercer Piano Works' hand on the door. She did not remember deciding to go. One moment she had been staring out of her office window, the next, she was in the back of a car, watching glass give way to brick. Her body had brought her here on instinct. The bell chimed as she stepped inside. The shop looked the same, the upright with its secret crest, the grand in the center, the cluttered workbench, the radio barely audible, playing something old and slow. Noah stood at a table with the action of a small spinet piano laid out in front of him. He wore the same work shirt and jean sleeves rolled up sawdust on his forearms. When he saw her, something eased in his shoulders, then tightened again. Lily is at school, he said. This is not about Lily, she said. He nodded once. Good afternoon, he added. It is, she said. They stood in the middle of the room, two people who had been through a storm in a building made of glass and were now face to face in one made of wood. You asked for time, he said. I did, she replied. I used it to be angry in new and interesting ways. Any of them involve fire, he asked. A few, she said. Most just involve me pacing my apartment and saying your name with different swear words attached. He accepted that with a small wince. Do you want to sit? He asked. I want to stand for this part, she said. He set down the tool in his hand and faced her fully. I am sorry, he said. The words were simple. No qualifiers. Hars, no softening. She watched him. For what? She asked. For making a choice about your pain without you, he said. For thinking I knew better than you what you could handle. For keeping the truth about that piano from you because I was afraid not for you but for myself. Her eyes did not soften, but they lost some of their hard shine. Afraid of what? She asked. Of watching you break, he said. Of being the one who pushed. Of losing what we had here before it had a chance to be anything. He took a breath. I told myself I was protecting you, he said. Mostly I was protecting the version of you that laughed at Lily's jokes and played the opening bars without crying. I did not want that to disappear. She stood very still. I am not fragile glass, she said. I live in those buildings. I know exactly how easily they crack. I know that now, he said. I should have trusted you to decide when to pick up that part of your past. Silence settled over the shop. The clock in the corner ticked. Somewhere outside a truck rumbled past. I cannot unknow that you did that, she said. It sits between us. I know, he said. But, she continued, I also cannot unknow what you did in that boardroom. He did not look away. You brought your whole quiet world into mine and told people who only speak in figures that I am allowed to be an actual person, she said. You did it when it would have been much easier to disappear. He thought of the torn note in his trash basket, the packed duffel bag. I almost did disappear, he said. But you did not, she replied. She stepped closer until only a few feet separated them. I am not ready to say that everything is forgiven and forgotten, she said. That would be a lie. He nodded. I do not need you to lie, he said. What I am ready for, she said, is to stop letting that piano sit between us like a bomb we are both pretending not to see. Her eyes flicked toward the upright. I lived in its absence for 12 years, she said. I can live with its presence if I choose to. Do you choose to? He asked. I think I do, she said. She walked to the upright, ran her fingers along the edge of the case, then lifted the fallboard. The keys lay there waiting. She pressed one gently. It answered with a clear tone. Noah stayed where he was. When my parents sold my childhood house, she said, they kept telling me it was just walls and furniture, that the important things were already gone. They did not tell me where the piano went. I did not ask. I pretended. I did not care. She traced the carved compass crest with her fingertips. Now I know it did not vanish into some anonymous void, she said. It ended up here, with a man who refuses to throw broken things away. He moved closer, but not too close, letting her dictate the distance. Do you want to hear something strange? He asked. Everything about this is strange, she said. Go ahead. When I first found the sheet music in its frame, he said, before I knew anything about Julian, before I knew your name, I I felt like it was sitting there waiting. For someone, for something. It did not feel abandoned, it felt paused. She looked at the empty bar on the page in her mind. Paused, she repeated. It is an unfinished thought, he said. You told me he said he was building you a bridge. He never got to finish it. Maybe that does not have to stay true. Her throat moved around a sudden tightness. He is not here to finish it, she said. No, he said. But you are? She let that hang there, heavy and tempting. I am not a composer, she said. Time. Neither was he officially, Noah replied. He was a person with something to say, and a piano. She caught the echo of his earlier words and almost smiled. I do not know how to write music, Baz, she said. I can help with the parts that look like math, he said. You know the part that feels like truth. Her eyes met his. This is not about replacing him, she said. It is not, he agreed. It is about not letting his last sentence trail off in midair forever. She drew in a slow breath. And if we do this, she said, if we add to what he left, it becomes something that is not just his. It becomes ours. Yes, he said. That scares me, she said. It scares me too, he answered. She stared at the keys for a long moment, then pulled out the bench and sat down. Get your pencils, she said. He obeyed without comment, fetching a thick music notebook and a cup filled with sharpened pencils. He set them on the top of the piano and opened to a blank staff. She took the copied sheet from the folder and laid it beside the empty page. Two worlds side by side, past and what might be. He sat on the bench next to her, leaving a respectful space the same way he had the first time he guided her hands to the keys. This time the air between them felt charged with something more. We start here, he said, pointing at the last written bar. What would you want to hear next? She closed her eyes. In her mind, Julian sat at a different piano, turning toward her with a half smile, waiting for her reaction. The ache of that memory twisted, then loosened. Not something sass, she said. Not anymore. Then not minor, he said. We can shift. He played a few options, softly simple progressions that tilted the melody toward different colors. One sounded wistful, one too bright, another felt fragile. She shook her head at the first two, at the third her eyes opened. That one, she said. He repeated the figure, then handed her a pencil. You draw it, he said. Her hand trembled as she placed the tip on the paper. The act of putting a note on the blank staff felt heavier than any contract she had signed. She wrote. One note, then another. A small arc of melody that leaned toward hope without pretending the past had been erased. They both stared at it. In 12 years, she said, voice barely above a whisper. This is the first time I have touched his work without feeling like I was disturbing a grave. How does it feel instead? He asked. Like I moved a stone away from a door, she said. The bell chimed. They both turned. Lily burst in school backpack, bouncing cheeks pink from the cold. Miss Patel forgot my lunchbox, she announced. Also, they put you on the internet again, Dad. But Mrs. Patel turned the TV off and we listened to the weather lady instead. She stopped when she saw them at the piano, the open notebook, the new marks on the page. Did you draw more music? She asked, eyes wide. Claire held up the sheet for her to see. We did, she said. We are trying to finish it. Lily climbed onto the stool, on Claire's other side, peering at the lines. It looks like the rest, she said, but different. That is the idea, Claire said. Lily nodded, satisfied. Can I help? She asked. In a way, you already are, Noah said. He placed his hands on the keys. From the top, he said. Claire set her fingers beside his. Lily rested hers on the highest notes, ready to drop in wherever she felt like it. They began to play. The old melody unfolded as it always had, filled with all its ghosts and shadows, then just past the place where it used to stop, a new line appeared. It did not fix everything. It did not erase anything. It moved forward. By spring, the new notes felt as natural under Claire's fingers as the old ones. The notebook on top of the upright had filled with pencil marks. Some ideas had been crossed out so hard the paper thinned. Others had been circled, checked, smudged, rewritten cleaner beside the mess. They had settled on a shape that made sense. The melody still carried the ache Julian had written into it, but now it climbed into a place that felt open instead of empty. One evening, the three of them sat in the shop with the door locked and the lights low. Outside, the street lamps threw long bars of orange across the sidewalk. Inside, the only bright spot was the lamp over the piano. Again, Claire said. You said that 10 times ago, Noah replied. Then this will be 11, she said. They played. Noah took the opening steady and sure. Claire joined in at the middle, her wrists loose, shoulders relaxed. Lily leaned on the high keys and dropped a handful of sparkling notes at the end of each phrase, her contribution entirely her own. At the final bar, the one Claire had written, the right hand reached for a note that lifted the whole line into a clear, bright space. A small pause, then a simple resolution. It did not pretend nothing bad had happened. It did not sink back down either. The last chord hung in the air. Lily clapped, delighted by her own timing. You have to name it, Lily said. Songs need names. Claire looked at the page. The original words were still there in Julian's hand. Bridge left uncrossed. She picked up a pen, and under that line in her own careful script wrote 2 more. Second bridge. Lily leaned over and read it aloud. Second bridge, she said. I like it better. It feels less lonely, Claire said. Months passed. Arden Dynamics moved through another quarter. The Solaris project went live. A smaller startup they had almost lost signed on after a meeting where Claire talked numbers and briefly something about building companies that were not afraid of human beings. Some reporters still tried to stir the old story. A columnist wrote a piece with a headline about love in unlikely places. A gossip site used a photo of Claire carrying a guitar case out of a music store. She read some of it, then stopped. In meetings, people still addressed her carefully, but the way they watched her had changed. There was less fear, more curiosity. In Brooklyn, the shop remained what it had been. Pianos came and went. Some left with new life, some did not. The upright with the crest stayed its keys worn smoother by new hands. On a cool evening in early winter, an invitation arrived at both the Glass Tower and the narrow shop. Aurora Crown Hotel requests the honor of your presence at the annual leadership gala. There was an extra line this time, printed in elegant script at the bottom. Closing performance by Claire Arden and guests. Claire stood in her office, the card in one hand, the city spread behind her. Do you want to? Grace asked. It seems I already said yes, Claire said, tilting the card so the light caught the embossed letters. You could cancel, Grace said. I could, Claire said. I will not. She called Noah that night. They want us to play at the gala, she said. Us, he asked, not just you. The invitation says guests, she said. I am choosing who that means. He was quiet for a few seconds. Lily is going to explode, he said. Tell her after she finishes her homework, Claire said. The night of the gala, the chandeliers at the Aurora Crown glowed as they always had. The marble shone. The air hummed with quiet competition and practiced charm. This time when Claire stepped into the ballroom, she wore a dress that was not black. It was deep blue, the color of late evening. Her hair fell around her shoulders instead of being pinned into something severe. People turned. Phones rose. She felt the familiar prickle of attention and found that it did not land quite as sharply as it once had. She crossed the floor, trading a few polite greetings. She barely registered. Near the piano, Noah waited in a dark suit that fit better than the last one he had worn in this room. His tie was straight, though Lily had tried to convince him to wear one with small musical notes printed on it. Lily herself stood beside him in a simple silver dress and sneakers that lit up at the soles when she walked. She bounced on her toes when she saw Claire. You look like the sky, Lily said. You look like you're about to take over the stage, Claire said. I am, Lily replied. At the end. The MC stepped up, microphone in hand. His voice traveled over the room, introducing sponsors, thanking attendees, sliding into the final announcement. To close our evening, we have something a little different, Nelm, he said. Our own Claire Arden, who many of you know well from boardrooms, will share an original composition. A murmur moved through the crowd. Claire walked to the mic. The silence that greeted her this time felt different from the silence that had followed her down a back hallway a year earlier. Less sharp. More open. This piece started 12 years ago, she said. It was written by someone who is not here tonight. For a long time, I believed it would stay unfinished. She glanced at Noah, then at Lily. Recently, with the uninvited help of a stubborn man and his even more stubborn daughter, I found a way to write the rest, she said. This is for the boy who began it and for the life that came after. She sat at the piano. Noah sat beside her. Lily perched on the far edge of the bench feet, not quite reaching the floor. Noah began. The first notes rose familiar to them, new to most of the room. The melody traced its old path across the keys, carrying all its history without explanation. Faces in the crowd softened. Some people closed their eyes. Claire joined at the middle, taking over the line with a steadiness that would have shocked anyone who still thought music made her weak. Her hands moved with confidence that came from hours in a Brooklyn shop, not from any conservatory. The new section unfolded exactly where the old one had always stopped before. The harmony shifted, the line climbed. It did not strain, it did not rush. It simply went where it needed to go. At the end, Lily dropped in her small, bright notes, a scattering of sound that made a few people in the front row smile through their tears. The final chord resonated through the hall. There was a heartbeat of stillness, and then the room rose. Applause hit them like a wave. Not polite this time, full. Some people were on their feet. A few faces in the crowd were streaked with tears. Claire stood turned toward the audience, then toward Noah and Lily. Her heart beat fast against the inside of her ribs. The air felt light in a way that had nothing to do with the height of the ceiling. She reached for Noah's hand. He took it. Then she dropped to one knee on the stage. The noise in the room shifted from applause to something like a collective intake of breath. Noah stared at her. Lily's eyes went huge. "Claire," he said. "I did not get a chance to warn you," she said. "I suppose that is appropriate." She took a small box from the pocket of her dress and opened it. Inside, a simple gold band sat on dark velvet. No diamonds, no flourish. "You came into my life through a song that hurt every time I heard it," she said. "You refused to treat that hurt as something to be hidden or managed from a distance. You saw the worst parts and still showed up. You stood in front of people who only respect power and reminded them that I am allowed to be human." Her voice stayed steady, clear enough to carry. "You fix broken things, Famain," she said. "You always try, even when you know you might fail. You did not fix me. You helped me learn how to stop pretending I needed to be fixed." She held up the ring. "I love you," she said. "Will you share whatever music comes next with me?" Lily tugged on Noah's sleeve so hard his arm dipped. "Say yes," she whispered loud enough for half the front row to hear. "Please." Noah laughed, the sound rough. His vision blurred at the edges. The chandeliers above became soft circles of light. "Yes," he said. "Of course, yes." The room erupted again. Claire slid the ring onto his finger, then stood. He pulled her into a tight embrace, one arm around her shoulders, the other reaching blindly for Lily. She squeezed into the space between them, arms around both their waists. The flashes from cameras popped at the edge of the moment, but they felt far away. Later, after the speeches and the congratulations and a few interviews that Claire kept mercifully short, they returned to Brooklyn. The apartment above Mercer Piano Works smelled like home. There was a trace of tomato sauce in the air from Mrs. Patel's cooking, the faint sweetness of the candle Lily had insisted on lighting on the coffee table. In the living room, the upright with the crest stood against its familiar wall. Its case had been polished until the wood gleamed. The compass marking inside remained hidden, known only to those who had leaned close enough to see. On the mantel, among a few simple framed photos, one in black and white, showed a young man at a piano head, tipped back laughing at someone just out of frame. Julian. Beside it, another frame held a more recent picture. Claire, Noah, and Lily stood in front of the shop, arms linked, squinting against the sun. Lily's mouth was open mid-sentence. Claire's hair was caught by the wind. Noah's hand rested lightly on their shoulders. Above the piano, in a plain black frame, the finished score of Second Bridge hung on the wall. Julian's original lines at the top, Claire's additions beneath. In the bottom corner, 3 sets of initials were written in small letters. JW, CA, and M. On the opposite wall, Lily's drawing had been taped up with more care than any art in the hotel ballroom. The 3 stick figures still stood beside their blocky piano hands joined. The bridge Lily had added between 2 cliffs in the background arched all the way across, now its planks drawn in firm strokes of crayon. Noah sat at the upright and touched the keys. The tone filled the room warm and full. Claire sat beside him, her shoulder leaning into his. Lily sprawled on the rug legs, kicking in the air, humming fragments of the song. "From the top," Lily said. "We just played it," Claire replied. "Again," Lily said. Noah smiled, placed his hands, and began. The notes moved through the small space into the hallway, down the stairs, and out into the street, where they slipped past the edges of glass and brick and into the larger city. Inside the apartment, 3 sets of hands stayed close ready for whatever came next as the music they had finished together carried on. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.